Mr. Yang, your signature policy is to give every adult in the United States $1,000 a month, no questions asked.
That's right.
This was remarkable from the President of the United States. He is being the kind of leader that people need.
Well, China was putting out information which was false, that our military gave this to them. I have to call it where it came from. It did come from China.
Fairness dictates that kudos where kudos are due, and here the Vice President and the President responded very quickly.
The World Health Organization provided an early stage test that had not met FDA approval for quality. And they said flat out there wasn't a ready test offered to the United States that was turned down.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, my friends, and welcome to this brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio, your voice of sanity, truth, medical science, biological science, and calm in the midst of the panic that is all around us due to this coronavirus. Brian Fisher is my name, the host of Focal Point, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
Got Jeff and Rob in the house, the three amigos, riding together to bring you the content of today. I want to remind you that at afr.net you can get podcasts. This program is uploaded every day. It's available as a podcast about 15 minutes, 20 minutes after the program is over. You can also find podcasts for my 60-second commentary, The Life and Liberty Minute. That's at afr.net. Find the podcast button at the top. Click it, find the Focal Point logo. You can subscribe there to the podcast. Never miss a broadcast. And by the way, this might be a good time to share with your friends. Encourage them to listen to Focal Point. So I listen to this radio station. I listen to this program that's been real helpful to me. A lot of good information. It's kind of kept me calm. It's kept me sane in the middle of this crisis. I encourage you to check it out. Also, our columns. Our opinion site is at afa.net, The Stand. I've got a brand new column up there to today. The title of the column, I want to give you the precise title of the column. I think I forgot to add it into my rundown. But it's about the good things that can come out of the coronavirus. I ask and answer the question, can any good thing come out of the coronavirus? And I answer that question in this column. Could have answered it with a lot more information, a lot more details, a lot more examples, but at least it's a place to start in your thinking about this. Because God tells us, the Bible tells us that what God does is he brings beauty out of ashes. That's his specialty, to bring something that is noble, healthy, good out of what is a disaster. That's what he specializes in doing. Is he doing that? Something like that during this coronavirus? I'm suggesting that the answer to that question is yes, he is, and you can read about it at afa.net. That's at the Stand. All right, email address if you want to correspond with us during the program or anytime really is focalpoint@afa.net. A friend of mine was saying this morning, a verse we ought to keep in mind during this whole deal is Ephesians 5:16. Remember Ephesians 5:16, it says this, that make the most of every opportunity, for the days are evil. So what is the apostle telling us there? He's saying, look, keep your eyes open, your ears open, your mind engaged, because days of evil, there's no question that's what we're in, that days of evil are also days of opportunity. People may be thinking about long-term issues like what happens when I die. I don't want to die. This coronavirus is killing people. Well, we've got an antidote for that fear of death. Maybe any other number of issues that come up for discussion right now. where people are open to spiritual things in a way they may not have been before. So let's remember Ephesians 5:16, make the most of every opportunity, for the days are evil. So let's be open to the possibility that God may open doors for fruitful conversations that are connected to this crisis. Now, in our reading, again, we're in the book of Joshua. We're toward the end of the book of Joshua, where they're dividing up the land now. In the section we're at today, got a couple of points I want to make about this that are applicable for today, including some application to where we're at in this coronavirus crisis. Here's how Joshua 13 starts. Joshua was old and advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, you are old and advanced in years. Joshua says, thanks a lot. I just told you that. You are old and advanced in years, and there remains yet very much land to possess. So what God is saying to us here, it doesn't matter how old we are. God is saying to us, I am not done with you. There is still land that needs to be possessed, and I am counting on you to be a part of my kingdom troops to take full possession of the land. God's saying, I still want to extend my kingdom. I've got plans to use you, even at your advanced age, to do it. I'm not ready to put you out to pasture just yet. And it's like I always used to say to my guys, don't retire, reload. You know, Caleb, we got a story about Caleb in chapter 14. Let me just read what it says about Caleb. Remember, he's one of the two spies. They went into the land. He and Joshua spied out the land. They came back and said, look, we can do this thing. We can take this thing. The Almighty God is with us. Even though we look like grasshoppers in their eyes, we don't have to worry about that because we have God on our side. And the other 10 were just wusses. They wimped out, and they gave such a bad report that the hearts of the people melted. They did not go up and take the land when they could have, and that's why they wandered around the desert for 40 years. A lot of people don't know that that's why they were stuck on the desert for 40 years, like there was something random about that. No, they could have been in the land, enjoying the land of milk and honey inside of 2 years from the day that they left Egypt. But because their hearts melted with fear, instead of facing this challenge with courage, instead of facing this challenge with boldness, they were stuck wandering around in the desert for 40 years. You know, and Moses, to his credit, he was ready to go into the land. Joshua was ready to go into the land. Caleb was ready to go into the land. But they didn't bail on their troops. Notice that. They didn't bail and said, look, I'm running with a bunch of cowards and wimps. I'm out of here. I'm done with this. No, they hung in there, continued to provide leadership for their people, and eventually their faith was rewarded, and they entered the land. So here's what it says about Caleb. Caleb says, I went to spy out the land 40 years ago, but my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. So what they had to do, the nation of Israel had to wait for 40 years for the last one of the soldiers, the last one of the men that refused to go up and take the land. They had to wait for them to die off. It took 40 years for all of them to die. And they couldn't go into the land until the last one of the men that chickened out, that wimped out, that wussed out when the pressure was on, wait for them all to die. You imagine being the last guy alive in the nation of Israel? Everybody saying, hey, how you doing, Pops? Feeling great. They go out and, oh, rats. You know, because they want you to keel over and kick the bucket. So anyway, Caleb says, look, my brothers went up, they melted the heart of the people. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. So Caleb says, look, God promised me that if I followed him with my whole heart, he would bless me. Moses promised me the land, and I'm here to claim what is rightfully mine. He said this, I am this day 85 years old. You know, it made me wonder if maybe this was Caleb's birthday. On his 85th birthday, he was given his share of the land. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war and for going and coming. I'm 85, but I'm ready to strap it on and go into battle. So now give me this hill country. I love that. He's 85 years old. And he says, I don't want something out in the valley. I don't want something on the plain. Give me the hill country. I'm ready for challenges even at my age. Give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day, even though the Anakim are there with great fortified cities. Caleb says, look, I don't care about that. I'm ready for war. I'm ready to take them on, fortified cities or not. It may be, he says, that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said. So Joshua blessed him and gave him Hebron. Now that sounds very generous on Joshua's part, but what he was saying, look, Hebron is yours, but you're going to have to go take it. And Caleb says, fine, give me the hill country, just get out of my way, and I'm going to take care of business at age 85, and he did. This is why I always used to tell my guys, when I was in pastoral ministry, don't retire, reload. One of my good friends in Tupelo was a lifelong employee. Had spent an entire career with one of the leading high-tech firms in the world. Time came when everybody else was retiring. He said, that's not for me. I'm going to die with my boots on. I'm going to empty both barrels on the way out of here. I'm going to empty the entire magazine before I'm done. And now he is the administrative pastor in his 70s. He's the administrative pastor for one of the leading churches in his city and in his state. Don't retire, gentlemen. Reload. Now, here's the promise that God makes to Joshua and the nation of Israel. Verse 6, I myself will drive them out, these hostile nations, before the people of Israel. Only allot the land of Israel for an inheritance as I have commanded you. Only allot the land of Israel as an inheritance. In other words, I want you to give the people the land of Israel, but I don't want you foraging out in other countries. I don't want you invading other countries and taking possession of their land. The land of Israel is what they are to have, and nothing beyond that. Don't go roaming around invading other nations for their land. This is the land that I have allotted to Israel. It reminds us that borders come from God. Borders are not man's idea. Borders are God's idea, and God is the one who sets the borders and the boundaries for every nation. This is what the scriptures say, Acts 17:26. He made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. Listen to this, having determined allotted periods. So every nation has an allotted period of history. How long they're going to last? How long is the United States going to last? Nobody knows. God says they've got an allotted period, and I can't tell you because God hasn't told me what it is. But God also says I have allotted the boundaries of their dwelling places that they should seek God. Twice during the Revolutionary War, we actually invaded Canada. Did you know that? 2 times during the Revolutionary War era, we invaded Canada twice. Both times we got turned away with our tails tucked between our legs. It was as if God was saying to us that land, that's not for you. The land that I have given you is the land that becomes the United States of America. That land, I've got a boundary for you, and Canada is on the wrong side of that boundary. So anyway, that's how they got possession of the land. But let's go to prayer. And again, some of what's in here is going to be very relevant to our battle with this coronavirus. Let's pray together. Lord God, I pray in Jesus' name for myself and for this listening audience that you yourself will drive out of our lives all the works of Satan, the flesh, and the world, and that you will lead us to take possession of our entire spiritual inheritance in Jesus. We see here, Lord, that the idea of clearly defined boundaries and borders comes from you. I pray that you will remind us all again that you are the one who determines the boundaries of our dwelling places, and that these boundaries will once again be respected, honored, and protected in our land by your grace and power. I pray that we will always speak and act like Caleb according to our convictions, even should we find ourselves in a distinct minority. In the face of great challenges like the coronavirus, I pray that we will be those who instill courage in our brothers rather than those who make the hearts of others melt with fear. I pray that we will follow you wholeheartedly and that you will be with us to give us increasing authority and influence everywhere we set our feet. In the name of Jesus, I pray these things. Amen.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. I am Brian Fisher, your host. Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. And speaking of muscular Christianity, all of you are familiar with NASCAR, Talladega, the whole bit. And, I'm convinced that the American people at heart, because of the influence of the gospel, are a good-hearted, a kind-hearted, and a generous-hearted people. And Jeff's got an example of that, and we're going to lead off today with the Reed Report. Jeff, tell us what you found.
Yeah, some people that follow NASCAR may be familiar with a small operation, but pretty well known, pretty legendary, the Wood Brothers Racing Team.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they started they saw a need and decided to fill it. They started with $1,500 and then challenged people to donate $10 to go towards raising money for tablets for people in retirement homes, so they could still FaceTime and communicate and fellowship with their families and loved ones. Well, they thought, well, if you give $10, we'll give you a signed autograph from our head driver and some of the family. Well, in the first day, they had raised enough for 68 tablets, and it has been rolling in. They are getting pretty concerned about Matt, the driver. He's now spending his isolation signing autographs. He can't keep up with them. They think they're going to have to just do a blanket, donation at this point.
Yeah.
Because, but that says something about the NASCAR fans and the heart for people that they don't even know.
Well, good for them. And that's a brilliant idea that the Wood team had, because if we do what we should be doing with the elderly and assisted living facilities, we should severely restrict the people that can go in to see our loved ones that live in one of these places. I think they ought to be checking everybody that walks in the door, getting their temperature, and if they've got a fever, if they've got a cough, sorry, today is not the day. We care too much for your family member to let you in. So you got to have some way to communicate, and that would be it.
It would be great to have tablet for my mother-in-law. My wife's mother's in an assisted care facility, and it would be awesome to have a tablet where they could communicate back and forth with FaceTime.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought about that until you brought that story up.
I mean, you've seen stories and videos of people, loved ones, outside the windows scribbling notes to their loved ones, and it's just heartbreaking. This is something great. I mean, somebody was thinking on their feet
speaking
here.
of that, I read a story yesterday about a couple that celebrated its 67th wedding anniversary yesterday. The wife, on her 67th anniversary, is holed up in one of these assisted living facilities. They will not let her out, and they won't let her husband of 67 years in to see her. So it's their 67th wedding anniversary, and he's got to stand out on the front lawn and hold up a sign to the window to tell his bride of 67 years how much he loves her. Happy anniversary. All right, couple of quick things before we get to the content of the day. A couple of developments in the General Flynn case. That was a total hatchet job from the beginning. It was a witch hunt. They were out to get Michael Flynn because he was connected to General Flynn, because he was connected to Donald Trump. And they got him convicted on some bogus charge of lying to federal investigators. As you know, it's kind of a ticky-tack thing. They set him up for it. It was an ambush, basically trapped him into doing it. And now it's being looked at. I mean, his attorney is asking the judge to dismiss the charges. And not dismiss the charges, but dismiss his plea. He pled guilty, and he said, look, I got bamboozled on this deal, and here are some of the details where the DOJ, the FBI, acted in bad faith. And it's time to have this thing dismissed. Here's a story from Just the News. Former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, she's a Democrat. She's an Obama holdover, and other senior Obama-era Justice Department officials told the Russia special prosecutor in private interviews that they had concerns about the FBI's conduct in investigating former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, according to memos that paint a dark portrait of the Bureau's behavior. Now remember, this is under James Comey. You know, a fish rots first from the head. So if you've got this kind of an environment, then you got to look to the leader, and that was Comey. And it was so bad that even Obama-era holdovers had a problem with the way the FBI was sandbagging Michael Flynn. So we hope to see better days ahead for him. I don't know if you remember this. This is, again, a part of Mueller's. It was just a ridiculous effort to try to prop up this idea that the Russians were in collusion to hand the 2016 election over to Donald Trump. There was never any evidence for it. There was nothing to it. But he indicted a Russian-based company, which doesn't even have a presence in the United States of America, and he indicted them, and so he figured they're not going to show up to defend themselves. They'd have to go all the way from Russia to the United States to defend themselves, so we can hang all these charges around their neck. We can accuse them. We can go to the public. We've got the proof. Here's a Russian company meddling with our election, and they were counting on this Concord Management was the name. They were counting on them not to show up to defend themselves, and all of a sudden they showed up. They hired an American law firm to represent them, and they showed up in court to defend themselves, and that completely threw the FBI and James Comey and the DOJ all off kilter. And they finally got around yesterday to dropping the charges against these completely bogus charges against this Russian company. So that just shows you just how slender the whole case on that Trump, how it's falling apart under any kind of close examination. Okay, got some silver linings in the coronavirus crowd. By the way, here is your daily update from the Religion of Peace. This is from California, Fresno, which is where I went to high school. California, this is the headline: Muslim confesses to 2017 Allahu Akbar shooting rampage. He killed 3 men because they were white. This is a guy by the name of Corey Ali Mohammed. This is what he said in his confession to the police. I just found some white men to kill. Busted up some backyard barbecue. He was shouting Allahu Akbar while the police were tackling him to the ground. Went to 4 different locations looking for white people to kill. He said this: I didn't want to do nothing to law enforcement, so I just found some white men to kill. So anyway, he's confessed to that, so the gig is up for him. Part of his testimony said, when I walked up to the PG&E truck, I saw a Mexican driver and a white guy. I didn't want to target the driver because he was Mexican, so I shot the white dude. All in the name of Allah. By the way, we just had another primary yesterday, and Joe Biden wiped the floor with Bernie Sanders, so that's a done deal. Joe Biden is going to be the candidate, the nominee for the Democrat Party, which means a lot of Bernie bros are just going to stay home. They're determined not to vote, and they gave the election. If they do show up, they're going to vote for Trump. 12% of the Bernie bros voted for Donald Trump in 2016. That's 216,000 voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Trump's margin of victory in those states, which were the ones that gave him the presidency, was 77,744. That's the margin by which he won. There were 216,000 Bernie bros were no way they were going to vote for Hillary, so they crossed over and voted for Trump. So anyway, it's going to be Biden versus Trump, so we can start gearing up for that. I've mentioned this before, that early voting, I think, is stupid. I think early voting by mail, is a perfectly terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. Here in the state of Washington, where we now live, that's the only way you can do it. Everybody votes by mail. You don't even have an option. You might want to go to a polling station, show up, get your ballot and vote, turn it in. You can't do that. You got to vote by mail. You got to vote ahead of time. You got to get your ballot in the mail early. So in Tennessee, people start sending their ballots in 20 days early. North Carolina, 20 days. Minnesota, 46 days before the election day. California, 29 days. Maine, 30 days. Now, here's what happened. This is just from, this is back before Super Tuesday. People were casting Super Tuesday votes prior to the most consequential events that affected Super Tuesday. They were voting before Pete Buttigieg, Tom Steyer, and Amy Klobuchar dropped out of the race. And a lot of people had voted for them. In Minnesota, there were 1,755 people who wasted their votes on Andrew Yang. More about him in a moment, because he dropped out on February 11. 41,508 wasted their votes on Klobuchar. You can't go get your ballot back and correct it. It's done. It's gone. You've cast. It's wasted. It's down the drain. 7,627 wasted their votes on Buttigieg. So that was 50,000 people wasted their votes in Minnesota alone. In California, 30,000 people voted for Young, down the drain. 83,000 voted for Steyer, gone. Put a torch to those ballots. 96,000 voted for Klobuchar. You can put those in the shredder. And 193,000 went for Buttigieg, gone, out of here in the archives. 100,000 completely wasted votes in California. In Texas, 150,000 votes were wasted, and so forth and so on. So early voting, it's a stupid, stupid idea because people are going to be casting the votes before they have all of the information that they need to make an intelligent decision. Because nobody in their right mind is going to vote for somebody that's not even in the race on Election Day, but that's what early voting compels you to do. Here's another silver lining in the coronavirus cloud. So if you live in Europe, here is the good news. ISIS now is telling all of their Allahu Akbar jihadi fanatics, telling all of them to avoid Europe. Don't hit Europe. Too much coronavirus there. You could wind up catching the thing and dying. So stay away from Europe right now. So that would be a good news for people that live there. You know, I've talked about the overreaction here. We've got curfews all over the place. Here's what happened in Italy, for instance. They're shutting that whole country down. I mean, San Francisco's been shut down. New York is getting ready to get shut down. Indiana has been shut down. I got an email from a listener yesterday. They're basically living under martial law in the state of Indiana. This is in the United States of America. There's no way these governors, these mayors have this kind of authority, but everybody goes along with it. What else are they going to do? They want to get locked up and thrown into jail, so they go along with it, and here you have it. Here's what Italy is doing. You know, Italy's been hit pretty hard by the coronavirus. They've got some serious penalties for people that are caught out of doors. In fact, if you have been tested positive for the coronavirus and you get caught out of doors in Italy, you go to prison for a minimum of 21 years. That's a minimum, mandatory minimum. Now, here's a story from Breitbart. On a single day, this was yesterday, police in Italy stopped 172,000 people on the streets, and they fined or sanctioned 79 of them for being outside their homes without adequate reason. 229 were found guilty of making false declarations. That's a crime that's punishable by up to 6 years in jail. So since from March 11 to March 16, the whatever they call them, Carabinieri, whatever they call them in Italy, they have stopped 838,000 people on the streets, and 35,000 of those have been fined. One dude was fined for washing his car while he was waiting for his wife to finish receiving dialysis treatment in the hospital. And here's what the prefect of Milan, Renato Sacconi, said today. The presence in parks must be reduced. There are still too many people who run, too many people who exercise their right to take a walk and take their dogs for a walk. This is not good. You know what they're doing here in America, what they're doing in San Francisco? That's the one thing you can leave your house to do. You can leave your house to go for a walk, but that's it. You can't go to the gym because they're all shut down, but you can go for a walk. Not in Italy, you can't. Not without being at risk for a huge fine. What's that?
That's if you're one of the San Franciscans that do have a home.
Yeah.
I mean, how much of their population is living
what are
in
they
the
gonna
streets
do
already?
It's like that Clarence Frogman Henry song, Ain't Got No Home. I mean, you find a homeless guy out on the street in San Francisco, and the place says, you can't be out on the street. You got to go back home. And the guy says, ain't got no home. Listen to Clarence Frogman Henry. You know, one quick thing before we get to the break here. I've got here's even in the United States, here's a guy in Kentucky. This is a guy that's has an armed guard. The police are stationed outside this guy's house. The police, 24/7, because he's refusing to self-isolate. He's 53 years old. Deputies are around this guy's house around the clock because he left the hospital without permission, and so the police have got him imprisoned, literally, with armed guards in his own house. That's in Kentucky. You know, and the media's up to their tricks. Watched a little bit of President Trump's press conference this morning, and I'll finish up on the other side of the break. but the media completely mangled. The New York Times, CNN, everybody mangled the quote that Donald Trump's when he was talking to the governors. What Donald Trump said to the governors, respirators, ventilators, all of the equipment, try getting it yourselves. We will be backing you, but try getting it yourselves. Point of sales, much better, much more direct if you can get it yourself. A faster way to do it. I'll tell you what they did with that quote when we get back.
Here's Twyla Braze with today's Health Freedom Minute.
It's Wedge of Freedom Wednesday. I'm going to share some of the practices that have recently joined the Wedge of Health Freedom. This
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Heading for the checkered flag, so buckle up and buckle in. Just to close the loop on that story I was telling you about, where Donald Trump on a telephone conference with all of the mayors, well, a lot of them anyway, was telling them, look, when it comes to ventilators and equipment, the fastest way you can get it is to try getting it yourselves. Point of sales are much closer. Yeah, much closer for transportation purposes. It's much better. It's much more direct. You can get it faster. You can get your hands on the equipment quicker. You can get it into service. So that's what Donald Trump is saying. And he said to them, we will be backing you. We're here to back you up, but we think you can get it faster if you do it yourself. And what the media did with that is they cut off Donald Trump saying, we will be backing you, and they cut it off at try getting it yourselves. And they created the impression that Donald Trump was saying to these states, you're on your own. I'm not going to help you. Good luck out there. But it's exactly the opposite. All right, let's. I got to read you this column, and then we're gonna burn some clips. This is a column by a guy named, it's not Nick Nolte. That can't be right. He's an actor. Last name is Nolte. He writes for Breitbart. Anyway, he has a column about the virtuous American. Imagine the virtuous American. This is the American that does everything the environmentalists tell him to do, everything that the politically correct crowd tells him to do, and here is how life is for him in a coronavirus. Picture this. Virtuous American wakes up in a small efficiency apartment located in a densely populated high-rise, eco-friendly building where there's no fresh air because you can't open the windows. But that recycled air ensures a perfect 72-degree lifestyle. What else does it ensure? Any bug that's in the system gets transmitted through the entire apartment building. Virtuous American exits his high-rise building for a half mile. In fact, that's how Legionnaire's disease started. Remember that? Legionnaire's disease started at an American Legion conference. Everybody in the same hotel. Something got in the ventilator system, and pretty soon everybody was coming down with this disease. So the virtuous American, he does everything like he's supposed to. Can't have people spread out. Got to live in high-density living situations to save the earth. They're going to be the first victims. Virtuous American exits his high-rise building for a half-mile walk through Virtue City, which is teeming with people. Along the way, Virtuous American stops at a coffee shop, which is packed with other virtuous Americans who are handling reusable, eco-friendly containers to a barista who fills everyone's order without changing his gloves to save plastic or washing his hands to save water. Virtuous American rides to work in a jam-packed subway car. No way you're getting 6 feet away from anybody on a subway car. Virtuous American exits the subway and walks to work through a sanctuary city teeming with illegal aliens. You know, and you got these millennials out there, 22 million illegals. They want to add them to the load on the healthcare system as if it isn't already overburdened enough. So you walk through a sanctuary city teeming with illegals who have been allowed to sneak in from every foreign country and stay without being screened or without being tested. Virtuous American goes to work in an urban high-rise building that's hermetically sealed to save energy, which means recycled air instead of fresh air. Bug gets in the system. Everybody in the building is exposed to it because you can't open the windows. Throughout the day, Virtuous American sips water from a bacteria-infested reusable bottle that he might have rinsed out with cold water a few days ago. He refills his environmentally friendly reusable bottle from a centrally located, environmentally friendly dispenser everyone touches throughout the day. For lunch, Virtuous American enters a crowded deli and orders food prepared and served by illegal aliens who have never been screened or tested. On the way back to the office, Virtuous American digs into his man purse and removes a bacteria-infested reusable straw. He may or may not have run a little cold water through it a couple of days ago, and he pops it into his iced coffee while gingerly walking through a poopy, homeless encampment because Virtue City's building regulations protect Gaia. After work, Virtuous American stops at the grocery store and fills his environmentally friendly, bacteria-infested reusable cloth grocery bags that he might have washed 2 weeks ago with fresh fruits and vegetables. So then the pandemic hits, and here's where Virtuous American is. Thanks to a dense population because of environmentalism, thanks to crowded mass transit, we got to get people out of cars, reduce burning of fossil fuels, thanks to recycled air, thanks to poopy streets, thanks to bacteria-infested but environmentally friendly cups, straws, bottles, and bags, it spreads, the pandemic does, like wildfire through Virtue City. So that's what happens if you are a virtuous American. Put yourself in a position to be among the first victims of the virus. All right. Well, let's burn some clips here. Let's begin with clip number 2. Well, these guys just crack me up, these politicians. This is Dick de Blasio. Remember, he's the guy that went and worked out. Right at the same time, Andrew Cuomo is locking everybody up in their houses. Bill de Blasio, his car's got a photograph of him right out in front of the local Y. And so Allison Camerota asked him about this on camera, clip number R2.
You went to the gym yesterday and Twitter lost its mind.
I don't get it, but we'll move on with our lives. The gyms are all closed now, Allison.
Yes, I know that the gyms are closed. Is there any sense that you were late personally to get your arms around what the sacrifice that's required?
No, everyone is going to have to make sacrifice.
Everyone's going to have to make sacrifices. Everybody except for me, because I'm too important to be expected to make sacrifices. Unless you think I'm exaggerating when I say that, let's grab clip number 5. Here's the mayor of New York, man of the people. I'm one of you. We're in this all together. Here's Mayor de Blasio, clip number 5.
I did not for a moment think there was anything problematic because I knew the dynamics. And again, I have to stay healthy so I can make the decisions for the people of the city.
Oh, man. So the mayor's saying, hey, I am way too important to obey the rules. Those are for lesser people. I'm the mayor. I'm way more important than you. You can't go to the gym, but I can because I am more important than you. That's Dick de Blasio, or Bill de Blasio. Let's grab clip number 6. Here's what, again, these are all big government guys, so we're hearing big government at work here. Clip number 6. Here's what Bill de Blasio says we got to do. If we have this depression coming, here's what we need to do.
You heard Secretary Mnuchin. $1,000 in people's pockets is not enough. It's not going to allow people to stay whole and be able to afford the basics in life. Washington has to get real. If we're going to have an unemployment level that looks like the Great Depression, we need a massive federal relief program that looks like the Great Depressions.
All right, so Mnuchin's talking about $1,000 a head. That's the kind of Andrew Yang's idea. He was talking about a universal basic income. We got to send everybody $1,000 today. That's what they're talking. Where they're going to get that? Where they're going to print it. Every time they print money and put that money in circulation, it lowers the value of the currency in your wallet by just a skosh. Now, maybe it's not enough to notice for a while, but after a while, that inflation starts to take a bite out of your wallet. So we're just going to send $1,000 checks to everybody. And by the way, this touches on the universal basic income idea. This is what Andrew Yang campaigned on. In fact, let's go down to clip number 8. Have that ready to go. Because Mitt Romney is out there banging the drums for this $1,000 a person. You know, and here's de Blasio. That's not nearly enough. So what you're going to have, and he's a Democrat, and Democrats are going to be saying the same thing. Here they are digging into our wallets, taxpayer wallets, to send a $1,000 check to everybody, and the Democrats are going to say that's not enough. You're a bunch of stingy people. Why can't you be generous and open-hearted and open-handed like us? So Mitt Romney's out there and he just sent $1,000. And I am, I think a universal basic income, which what Andrew Yang was talking about, campaigned on, is a perfectly horrible, no good, very bad idea. But even a guy by the name of Milton Friedman, who was a conservative economist, he was a supporter of the universal basic income. Let's just send every American like $10,000 a year or something like that. But Milton Friedman said, here is the trade-off. We will give everybody a universal basic income, $10,000 a year, or whatever it was. But what we're going to do is we're going to shut down every welfare program in the government. We're going to close it all down. There's going to be no food stamps. There's going to be no Medicaid. We're going to give you $10,000 to take care of those issues yourself. And so that's what you get in exchange. You get $10,000 a year, and there are going to be no welfare programs. Now, if we did something like that, I might be able to get behind that. But anyway, here is Andrew Yang, clip number 8. He's on and being asked what he thinks about Mitt Romney signing on for this $1,000 check to everybody in America.
That he's joined the Yang Gang. We're getting a lot of new members, certainly under the worst circumstances anyone can imagine.
So Mitt Romney joining the Yang Gang. Now I want to play this clip of Mitch McConnell because this is how really, really terrible things happen in America. Now, Mitch McConnell is by no stretch of the imagination a fiscal conservative. I mean, almost none of those guys up there anymore are. But this is exactly how you get completely disastrous, bloated budgets and horrible pieces of legislation. Here's Mitch McConnell. He's on the Senate floor. They've got this monstrosity of a House bill that's on the floor. It's got all kinds of unfunded mandates going to require small businesses that are already strapped. They've got to provide paid sick leave for 14 days. Under a government mandate, whether you can afford it or not, you've got to pay your employees 2 weeks of sick leave, whether you've got it in your budget or not. So it's got all these kind of unfunded mandates in it. And you know what Mitch McConnell says? I'm going to vote for this thing. We're in a crisis. We're in an emergency. So I'm going to hold my nose and vote for this thing. But this is exactly how you get these horrible pieces of legislation out of Washington, D.C. Here's what he has to say, clip R3.
However, Madam President, the House's bill has real shortcomings. It does not even begin to cover all of the Americans who will need help in the days ahead. And more specifically, it achieves one of its signature policies by imposing a new, untested mandate on small businesses without guaranteeing they will have sufficient funds in advance to finance this new employee benefit. Everyone agrees that workers need relief. Republicans are working on bold solutions to help individuals and families as we speak, but small businesses need relief as well. This is literally the worst time in living memory to pile even more burdens and costs onto small businesses.
So Mitch says, this is the worst time in history to do something like this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to vote. Where is the courage here? Where is the principle? You talk about compassion. How is this compassionate to be laying this burden on small businesses? You know, 70% of the jobs in America are in small business. It's the small businesses that are providing a living wage, a living income to 70% of the American workers. And now Mitch says, this is going to be an unconscionable burden that we're going to load on them, but I'm going to go ahead and vote for it anyway. Now, remember the mantra of the Democrats is never let a crisis go to waste. Planned Parenthood believes that. Listen to what a Planned Parenthood worker did. This is clip R4. You may be familiar with the 40 Days for Life. It's a prayer vigil. My church, I led our church into doing this every year I was there. You have a prayer vigil outside the Planned Parenthood facility, right in front of it. You do it on the sidewalk, so it's public property. You're not trespassing. And you spend an hour every night for 40 days in prayer in front of a Planned Parenthood clinic, that God will bring this thing down, stop this insanity, this genocide of abortion. Now, here's what one of the volunteer leaders of the 40 Days for Life said happened to one of their volunteers in front of a Planned Parenthood clinic, clip R4.
We sadly recently had a Planned Parenthood employee cough and sneeze on a 40 Days for Life volunteer in Pittsburgh, which was absolutely shameful. We're seeing the abortion industry do what they always do with these national emergencies, whether it be a hurricane like we had here in Houston or now the corona outbreak. They use this to promote abortion. It's who they are, it's what they do. And so I want to encourage you to be who you are and do what you do, which is to pray and to fast, either from home, for church, or if you are able and willing to come out and participate physically in 40 Days for Life in one of these 507 cities, because that is more powerful now than ever.
So that's what these Planned Parenthood people, these are the type that believe the absolute worst. They believe all the hype from the left-wing media that the coronavirus is a death sentence, that people get the coronavirus, they die. So here they are out deliberately trying to infect pro-lifers in front of Planned Parenthood clinic. Now here's how this thing works. Here in some, as we get to the end of the program, imagine scenario one where coronavirus lives up to its press. The solution is government needs more permanent control over our life to correct it. Coronavirus dies down, government takes credit and uses the demise to impose more burdens on Americans. God bless.